Hi, my name is Gene Postman, and welcome to Stories from the Hearth. This is the second in a series. I'll probably stop numbering them after a while because I'll just basically lose count, but right now there's so few. The first one was entitled No Dorothy, This is Kansas, and this one is entitled Fear of Flying. Now, that may bring up depending upon how old you are, a view of a book written by Erica Jong that was somewhat noteworthy because it talked a lot about feminine sexuality and the sudden realization to the male world out there that, oh, wait a minute, if done properly, women like sex. What a surprise. Anyway, this has nothing to do with that. Sorry about that. It actually has to do with the fact that I made note earlier in the previous story that I didn't fly. So I figured I should give you a little bit of history and explain why it is I don't fly. I did fly, by the way. I flew quite a bit, although I hadn't flown. My very first time, I should say, I flew. That is, as a passenger. I never actually drove anything in the air. I was an adult. In fact, my kids were on planes before me. How's that for? Because my wife and kids would go down to visit her parents, and I would be working, so I didn't get to go. And and the kids loved it. Kids thought flying was terrific, and they reached a point in time where they flew by themselves, and they enjoyed it immensely. I, however, was always a white-knuckled flyer. When I flew with my wife, Mary Lou, it was not near as difficult as flying by myself. But at any rate, as I grew up and learned about flying, I mean, flying always fascinated me. To some degree today, it still does. And I have marvelous dreams of flying. I also have a lot of dreams of falling. I never quite ever hit bottom. I guess that's a good thing. And it wasn't always in a plane. Sometimes it was in an elevator. And sometime I'll talk about, I've forgotten the exact term, but it's conscious dreaming. There's a term for it, and I'll look it up and I'll explain it sometime, but it's irrelevant at this point. So at any rate, through my life, I had seen comedians talk about flying. Everybody from Shelley Berman to, well, a lot of them. And while they didn't, I mean, these people must have flown because they were comedians traveling around the country, but at any rate. And they did marvelous routines about it. Some of my favorite lines are one being, when you get on the plane, you go, hope the plane don't crash, and of course that pisses people off. That's because they didn't think of it before you said it. But then what would you do if you make that comment and the captain goes, hear, hear? Yeah. So, why don't I fly? Well, clearly I had some very difficult experiences. I was never a good flyer anyway. I was the kind of flyer that when everything was smooth, I was worried. See, if the plane was kind of, going along, it felt right, like, you're on the road or whatever that means. But if it's just whoosh, I always had the feeling, what's to keep me from just going, who knows? Anyway, and yes, I know all the things. Flying is the safest way to travel. Uh, Shelley Berman's line is, I don't know how much consideration they've given to walking. And then they will say, statistically, yeah. I have a thing about statistically. If you want to talk about statistics, then let's define them properly. There are lies, there are damned lies, and then there are statistics. You can make numbers say anything you want them to. It doesn't matter. You put in the proper perspective and they can say anything. And maybe it is or maybe it isn't. Personally, I would like to see uh, dirigibles come back. Now I know that brings the Hindenburg to your mind, and you're going, oh my God, think of the death and the destruction. And wait a minute, stop, hold it right there. Let's understand some things about the Hindenburg when it came down. First of all, it was not the worst air tragedy in the world. It was the most photographed, because, look what happened. A lot of people there, news were there. Here it is coming down. There's flames everywhere. But it didn't really kill nearly as many people as you would think. Plus the fact that the Hindenburg was flying on hydrogen, not helium. And, hydrogen's explosive, isn't it? Yes, I mean, that's why we like it, because it causes combustion. Really big, strong, huge combustion. Yaha. Anyway, so personally, I would like to see dirigibles come back with helium. Little short hops. I might be willing to try that. Who knows? Okay, so what happened? What happened was that I was working for a company in San Diego, and we would take short trips up to Burbank. Beautiful downtown Burbank, just north of Los Angeles. Just a little too far to drive, but and you can't really get the train there. Well, you can. I mean, you can take a train there, but it's so you take puddle jumpers. And I'm not a big fan of puddle jumpers anyway, so. But we were returning one evening, and it was a stormy evening, and the good news is that Burbank is a very short flight from San Diego. I mean, just about the time they reach the apex of, their flying, they're starting to descend. Because, you get up there and you go, oh, well, now we got to land. And that's not bad, I suppose. But this particular trip, which was supposed to be a 15-minute journey, by the way, maybe 20, more because of traffic than any time up in the air, to be honest with you. And I was on a airlines who will remain mostly anonymous, small, little jet kind of thing. You're familiar with the jet types, I'm sure. When you have to weigh yourself. Everybody who comes on's got to be weighed. That's an encouraging thing right there. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, you're over the limit. Either go drop 20 pounds or... And the plane itself, I don't know, maybe it holds 20 people, maybe more, I don't know. Every seat is an aisle seat and a window seat, little portholes that you can look outside or not. And I preferred riding on a plane in around the wings. Um, I just felt more secure, and somebody told me once that it's even though it's bumpy, the tail has a tendency to do that, and if you're up front, so if you're on the wings, it's just kind of maybe. But in this particular instance, I was stuck in one of the back seats near the tail. Now, first of all, when you get on the plane, you can't stand upright. It's just even me, I'm 5'10", and no, you gotta stoop a little bit. I can't remember if there was a stewardess. I suspect probably not, but there might have been. I mean, anyway, and you sit down, and I mean, the chairs look like aluminum lawn chair rejects. They really do. I mean, it looks like it's tubular aluminum. It's got some padding that was put over it. You have a cushion that's kind of, but it floats. And the seat belts were just, ooh, yeah, right. Okay. So at any rate, it wasn't a comfortable trip. Starts off okay. Pilot comes on, whom, by the way, you can see up at the front because it's a curtain. It's not a door, it's a curtain. But then, trust me, nobody would hijack this sucker on a bet. Anyway, and he says, there's a storm coming, so we're going to fly out over the ocean, and then we're going to go down south, and then we'll come back in. And I thought, oh, okay, well, if the plane comes down, you land on water, and you've got your flotation device. And we start off. And the 15-minute flight turned into 90 minutes. And the storm that he was going out to sea to avoid apparently followed us. And like a very big dog, decided to play with us. And I would venture to say that in riding this trip, that we went up and we went down way further than we went horizontal. We seemed to spend a whole lot of time. Now, I know we did not roll over completely, but we did do some pretty healthy banking. And I'm sure that the pilot in this was truly, truly skilled. Either that or he had no clue what he was doing. I'm not sure which. But at any rate, we for 90 minutes rode on a roller coaster from hell. I'm not big on roller coasters anyway. And when it goes whoosh, when you see it coming, you can prepare for it. But when you can't see it coming, it just happens. And when you get lifted out of your seat, even when your seatbelt is on, not, totally up into the air, crashing my head into the top there, but enough that I can ride a really, really, really miserable ride. And 90 minutes later, we touched down in San Diego. It was one of the times when I honestly thought getting down on my hands and knees and kissing the pavement might not be such a bad idea. Now, I didn't quit flying after that experience. I'm not quite sure why. It would have seemed to me that I should have, but I didn't. And in fact, I went to work for another company and again had to fly to different locations. Not very often. Mostly my traveling was on the road. I was a systems engineer. So, and I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. And most of the area that I worked was around there. Although the Seattle office had lost their systems engineer, and so I often went up to cover until we got a replacement. But it was a trip back from Chicago that, from my standpoint, sealed the whole deal. By and large, it was a long trip. Updrafts around the Rockies seem to be particularly volatile on this particular trip. And I had realized that while the flying was difficult, that it was really the time before flying that started to get to me. Blood pressure going up. I was making myself sick. So when that plane finally landed and that flight was over, I had decided that that was it. I wasn't going to fly anymore. About a week later, manager at the office that I worked wanted me to go up to Seattle. This was towards the end of the week. And there was a meeting on Monday, and the customer had specifically asked for me. And he said I could, catch a flight in the morning and be there in time for the meeting. It would be great. And I went back to my office and I made up my resignation and I went back to his office and I knocked on the door. I said, I need a few minutes of your time. And he said, sure. And I handed him my resignation. And he looked down at it and he said, why? I said, I'm not flying anywhere ever again. I can't deal with it. And he looked at me and he said, you're serious about this? We're only talking about a flight up to Seattle. I said, yeah, pretty much so. And I said, if you need me in Seattle, I'm more than happy to be there. I'll even leave tonight on the train. I'll be up there in time for the Monday morning meeting, but I'm not going to fly. And I went back to my office. And I started packing up. And he came in and he said, you're serious about this? And I said, yeah, deadly. I can't handle it. And he said, damn. He said, I'd really hate to use you. They really would like you to be there. I said, I'm more than happy to do it. I'll get on the train and be there Monday morning. And he looked at me and he said, okay. That was it. I guess the fact that it was a multi-million-dollar deal and we did close it, and afterwards, when we were going down in the elevator where everybody was getting ready to leave and I was going to go get on the train, and he said, I wouldn't have believed it, but he said, it's worth it. He says, we'll put up with the inconvenience because the bottom line is there are times when we just have to have you there. And I felt pretty good about it. And it has been and had been difficult at times, but by and large, it worked out pretty good. So I don't fly anymore. And I have traveled to various places, mostly fairly local, so it's never been a real problem. Although a couple times I made a trip to Denver during the winter one year, and there was a conference, and everybody in the office went there. And after the end of the conference, and everybody got themselves all set, and we'll all see you Monday. And I thought, terrific. And I went and got on my train and had a nice, pleasant ride, by the way, going from Denver to Oakland and back and forth. It's a great trip. You should take it if you haven't. Get yourself a compartment. You'll love it. And I got back to work and nobody was there. It seems that they were snowed in. And while my train was able to get through, and did because clearly I was there, everybody else was in Denver. And I get a call that morning from the Western Area Vice President who's in Denver. And he says, I need you to do a couple of things for me. And I said, sure. And he said, first of all, don't say a fucking word. I don't want to hear about it. Then he gave me a list of things he needed me to take care of. So I will leave you with one note on why I'm not flying, and I don't fly, which is that there was a trip that I had taken once to Denver, of all places. And over the intercom comes the gentleman with the reassuring voice, and he goes, he says, we're coming into Denver, and we have a slight problem. And I've got good news, and I have bad news. Says, the bad news is, we've lost an engine. The good news is, you're on a train. Have a pleasant evening, and I hope you enjoy this story as the others. These are all basically true, colored a little bit perhaps from my own imagination, but hey, it's my life. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll watch the others. Have a good evening.